we are going to be reviewing walking, which is a very basic movement in pole. Now, obviously you can walk without a pole, but we're going to review how to walk with a pole, a couple of stylistic options, and how to engage your body to prep yourself for upcoming spins and pole movements. Now, to be honest, a lot of people learn how to walk around a pole and then think it's a ridiculous thing and that they don't need to practice it, and then they move on. But walking can be a really nice filler for choreography or combos. It can be a really fun way to warm up and condition your body. And it's a really nice backup plan for when you want to freestyle dance, but you don't really know what to do or don't really want to do very much. So let's start with some basics of walking. My feet are going to be about 6 to 9 inches away from the pole. Now, you can see that my right dominant foot has a white sock and my left less dominant foot has a black sock, and there's a black scrunchie on my left hand. As we talk about some of the more dynamic walks, this may come in handy. So starting with my feet about 6 to 9 inches away from the pole, I want my inside arm, so the one closest to the pole, to be nice and high. I'm holding with that true grip, the baseball bat grip, and keeping my shoulder down. My other hand can be on my hip. I can keep it by my side. We just want to avoid T-rexing, so no little tiny hand up at the side. Do something with it. Maybe it graces your body, maybe it does some wrist rolls out to the side, but think of doing something with this hand. Now back to our feet. I want to think of the base of the pole like a clock. So my steps, for now, are going to be equidistant from one another and equidistant from the pole. Now, if I think of the base of the pole as a clock, we're thinking 12, 3, 6, 9. So I'm going to take one foot, which for me will be my inside dominant foot, and step in front of the pole at what would be 12 o'clock. Shifting my weight into that foot, my opposite foot will come around to 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Pretty simple. It's like walking regularly. As we talk about walking, if you find that it's difficult to remember where to put your feet, you can draw a tape line or a chalk line in a circle about 6 to 9 inches away from your pole, and that can be your base for what to walk on. Now, walking without a pole is pretty simple, so walking with a pole is just putting your hand on the pole. But if we want to prep our body for going into pole moves and spins, I'm going to think about lifting my heel off the ground a little bit. It doesn't need to be a full releve, but we want the heel slightly off the ground so that we're pressing the weight into the ball of our foot. So my inside arm will be nice and high. I'll press the weight into the ball of the foot, keeping the shoulder down. I'll slide my hand down about an inch or two and then lean the chest away so I feel tension in that back and shoulder. Then we do the same thing. We take steps at 12, 3, 6, and 9. We do want to do this on both sides to get comfy, so I'm going to take that outside foot, the one furthest away from the pole, and step forward. Shifting the weight between the feet, I'm going to do a nice big circle with that opposite arm and reach up and grab the pole. Now I've already started my walk, so I'm just going to take those steps around the pole in the opposite direction. I can hip dip, stick my booty out, or just pivot when I'm changing direction. Try this a couple of times, taking a few steps in one direction and then switching directions, doing the same thing, getting comfy with not having to look at the floor to see where our steps are. Now, as we get comfy with our walks, you'll notice that this grip may not be your favorite grip. I often like to slide my arm down and wrap my forearm around the opposite side of the pole. So I'm still gripping as I lean away, but it's more of an arm grip than a hand grip. Play around with both of these a little bit, and as you get comfy with your walks, think less about doing 4 equidistant walks around the pole and think about maybe doing 2, 6, 8, and then maybe stop counting altogether. So our 4 equidistant steps around the pole were pretty evenly spaced out. Maybe I do 1 big step, 2 little steps, 1 big step, 2 little steps. Play around with these walks and play around with walking too far away or too close to the pole. You'll notice if we get too far away, you'll almost feel like a little kid at a playground. And if you get too close, it feels really uncomfortable because the pole is kind of in your walking space. Once we've gotten comfortable with our basic walks, let's add a little flair. We are going to do a ball change step around the pole. Now, as always, you don't need a pole for a ball change step, but we're going to use the pole for it. So my ball change step would be a step, tap, step. It's almost like a skip. So with my right dominant foot, I would step. My left foot would meet it and I would shift the weight into the left foot, and then my right foot would step again. Now this can be a walk or it can be more of a skip or a hop. So I could do step, tap, step. Now you can definitely play around with walking versus skipping, but let's start simple. So my inside right hand is going to reach up nice and high. My inside right foot is going to take a step like it normally would. Now for this ball change step, we're just doing that right inside leg for now. So the right foot is the only one that's going to actually be stepping forward. The left outside leg is just going to be meeting it. So I'll step with the right, bring the left to meet the right and shift the weight into the left foot. Then that right foot steps again, left meets it, right step, left meet, right step, left meet. Let's switch it to the other side. So my left outside foot is going to be the one taking the steps. Left step, right meet, left step, right meet, left step, right meet, left step, feet together. Let's try it on the other side. Same thing. Right step, left meet, right step, left meet, right step, left meet, right step, together. Now we do the opposite. Left step, tap, left step, tap, left step, tap, left step, together. Get comfy with this single ball change. So we're just doing one side. It's more than one ball change, but I'm going to call it a single ball change because it's just a single side. So we'll start with our step tap, and then we'll start adding a little bit of a hop in it to make it look like a hip pop. Once you're comfortable with that single ball change step on one side, we're going to do 2 ball change steps together, changing sides. So remember, our ball change is a step, tap, step, which means we want to think of this in segments of ball change. So step, tap, step, comma, step, tap, step, comma. So let's start these slow, because without the pole, it would be step, tap, step, step, tap, step. Starting with that right inside foot, we're going to step with the right, tap with the left, step with the right. That's our first ball change. Now we do the opposite. So we lean forward, step with the left, tap with the right, step with the left. Now we do the right side. Right, tap, right, switch, left, tap, left. Please remember to think of this as step, tap, step, comma, step, tap, step. There are other ways to think of this sequence which will confuse you. So if you get confused easily, maybe don't listen to this 10 seconds. If you think of it as step, tap, step, step, tap, step, 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 you're just going to keep stepping because mentally the sequence doesn't make as much sense. We've already learned step, tap, step, so we want to keep that sequence. As always, we do this on both sides, and we want to think of adding that little hop as we get comfy. I'm going to start with my inside left foot. We're going to step, tap, step, right, step, tap, step, left, step, tap, step, right, step, tap, step. This one can sometimes take a while to master, especially if you don't have a dance or movement background. But if you have mastered it, that's great. Ball change steps are really helpful as we get into different pole moves because you can use them if you prefer to be facing a certain direction when you go into your move. For example, if I were walking around the pole and I wanted to do a move facing you, but I need my inside right foot to be my next step, and my left foot is actually going to be my next step, I could ball change and I would be prepared to do whatever spin I was going into. It's a really easy way to cheat into your move. As we talked about earlier, a lot of people see walking as a silly thing that they don't need, but it does become really helpful as you're building combos, not only because it is a great filler, but it also allows your audience, if you're performing, to take a break in between tricks, and it gives you a breather in between tricks. Additionally, it's a really great way to warm up or to assist in your freestyle dancing. So I encourage you to play with the walks that you use around the pole, and maybe you create new walks, things that maybe you're used to doing, like a grapevine, or just stepping back behind you and cross-kicking forward. Obviously, you don't need a pole to do walks. You could dance around without the pole very easily. But we do want to get comfortable with that tension of my chest leaning away as I do my walks, so that as I go into more dynamic movements and spins on pole, I'm comfortable with the engagement. Similar to before, I do have different colors on my feet. My right dominant foot has a clear shoe, and my left less dominant foot and left hand have a colored shoe and black scrunchie. So we're still going to do the same steps, but we're going to talk about how to do them in heels. First and foremost, much like in our releves, we want to be pushing through the ball of our foot. You can absolutely use the heel on the ground, but you do want to get comfy lifting it a little bit, especially for when we're pivoting. Otherwise, you're going to be dragging that heel and it might make it more difficult. So step number one is getting comfy with balancing our weight over our heels. Holding onto the pole, either with that forearm grip or reaching up nice and high. We're just going to take a few small steps. Ball of the foot first, then press the heel down, shift the hips forward onto that foot before we drag that second foot. Really focusing on balance, keeping the feet about 6 to 9 inches away from the pole, and making sure that we step, externally rotate as I shift the weight, step, externally rotate, slight pivot, neutral rotation, shift the weight. Now we don't want to be too close to our pole because it's going to feel really weird. And if we're too far away, you'll feel like a little kid at a playground. So we want to think about really keeping that 6 to 9 inch distance from the base of our pole. You can drag your shoes if you want to. And when you go to change direction, make sure that outside foot steps far enough away where when we pivot, the heel doesn't clip the toe of my shoe. Now, if I didn't step far enough forward and was thinking of keeping everything close, when I go to pivot, you can see my heel gets caught on my back foot toe. We don't want to step so far away that we're kind of walking our feet back and forth. We want to think about a nice distance between the feet, so a couple of inches, so that when I pivot, I lift both heels, keep the weight central over both feet, so that I can pivot back and forth and change direction. With all of our steps, we want to think about pressing through that platform of the shoe, not necessarily pressing through the heel. You can use the heel when you need it, but trying to keep it off the ground just to start will help you build that ankle strength, and it will help you to understand how to balance over the ball of your foot instead of shifting the weight back in your heels. Once you get comfortable walking around in your heels, there are a lot of different movements, especially edge work, that require you to actually only have the heel on the ground. But for now, let's get comfortable strengthening those ankles and walking around the pole, just using those basic steps, trying not to put too much weight in the heel of our shoe until we need that weight in the heel of our shoe. To be clear, walking only on the balls of your feet without using the heel is very much an aesthetic, but we do want to get comfortable with it because it will help us in the future with our transitions in our spins and with a lot of our pole tricks. Use the heel sparingly, and then as we progress, you can start to add your own style and flair.